What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Vegas Nation First and 10, your bi-weekly go-to for Raider news and analysis. And on a late Monday night here in Las Vegas, we are going to be doing game analysis. The Raiders dropped their 10th straight game, 15-9. They are now 2-12 on the season, tied for the worst record in the league. A lot of ugly things to talk about, but before we get to all of that and all the gory details, I just want to remind everybody that Vegas Nation podcasts, including First and 10, are all brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports, and we always thank them for their support. Adam Hill, it's been a case this year of if it's not one thing, it's another. Today there were multiple transgressions, special teams play calling, some head-scratching plays, some over-aggressiveness, and it all added to a 15-9 loss that, quite honestly, the Falcons, as bad as they were playing, were begging the Raiders to win this game in a lot of different ways. And the Raiders just could not muster up, from quarterback play to just bad special teams. They couldn't get it done.
Yeah, they couldn't. You said it was 10 straight. It feels like 20 or 30 straight at this point. It's been forever since we've seen this team win a game. And it's just, as you mentioned, it's been different things every week. Sometimes it's the offense, sometimes it's the defense. Usually the special teams is good. Mm-hmm. More not tonight. They did not. They certainly had a lot of letdowns. And so on a night where the defense actually played pretty well, except for one play that we hear from Jack Jones about in a little bit, that he kind of bit on a double move and gave up a touchdown. Other than that, the defense was pretty good. But sometimes those one play here and there are what ended up costing you, and it certainly cost the Raiders tonight, along with some real letdowns on special teams, again, as we mentioned.
Yeah, to put the special teams miscues in perspective, the Raiders had one block punt, another that was tipped, an extra point got blocked, and Amir Abdullah committed a cardinal sin in football by fair catching the ball inside his 5-yard line. So to kind of put a bow on all that, Amir Abdullah's miscue, instead of letting the ball roll into the end zone, the Raiders are set up at their 4-yard line. 2 plays later, a safety. Alexander Madison gets dragged down in the end zone. That's 2 points. The missed extra point is 1 point, so we're talking about 3 points right there, right? And then the block punt led to a Falcons field goal. That's 3 more points. You add that all together, that's the 6 points. The Raiders lost by 6 points. So again, in a game that was this close, and only because the Falcons were, just as inept offensively as the Raiders were, you just can't have those types of mistakes, because obviously that was the ball game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the egregious ones. There was other mistakes on special teams, which is just, it's wild. I mean, we forget about it because it didn't end up amounting to much, but the Falcons returned the opening kickoff in the third quarter all the way to midfield. Right. You can't allow that. I mean, we just haven't seen that often with this team. They allowed that to happen. There was also another punt that Jack Jones was in for Amir Abdullah, and then he allowed that punt to roll, and it rolled all the way inside the 5-yard line as well. Again, those didn't lead to anything, but it's yardage here and there. It's just it's eating away at your opportunity to win a game. And again, in the end, probably beneficial for the Raiders to lose, but we talk about that every week. Like, we're just focusing on what actually happened in this game. Yeah. And those things, you're not going to be able to win games. They're not good enough to win games when those things go wrong, and they did. And a lot of things went wrong today. And we talked about the blocked extra point, which, again, did it matter? Not really, because they didn't. They would have, if they would have scored a touchdown at the end, they would have been able to kick an extra point again to win. So it doesn't really matter, but it's just a sign of bigger things. Yes. And I was talking to a player in the locker room, and just kind of, hey, what went wrong? And he said, everything. And he's like, why don't you go count how many guys were on the team for that extra point
on the field?
Yeah, how many guys were on the field?
It wasn't 11.
It was not 11. They were short. And if you watch, Michael Mayer tries to make up for it. I mean, this is just how bad it is. Michael Mayer tries to make up for the fact there's only 10 guys on the field by trying to block 2 different guys that are going 2 different directions. Yeah. And he's kind of leaning out at both of them. And you can only do so much. Like, you can't block 2 guys. And that's kind of what happened there. And you can put it on everybody. There was, obviously the players didn't execute. The coaches didn't do their job by making sure the guys were on the field. The players didn't know there wasn't enough guys on the field. Like, all those things went wrong. And, again, you just can't have all of those things go wrong in a game and expect to win when you're limited in talent like the Raiders are. Now, I will say, defensively, pretty good, as we said, most of the game, except for the one big play. Offensively, they struggled much of the game. Looks like they figured something out in the quick game, in the no huddle, trying to scramble up. They really put the Falcons on their heels on the first drive they had, and then the second drive they moved the ball downfield. They weren't able to score, but they did,
penalties,
put themselves in position to potentially score that there at the end. But took way too long to figure it out, and by that time,
the Falcons were a little bit giving up yards. You know, they were defending the end zone. You know, they don't want to.
Yeah, I think on the last drive, but on the second to last drive, again, here's the problem that the Raiders had, I think, was that second to last drive taking a long time. And then obviously they could have gotten the ball back a little bit earlier with 2 timeouts remaining, better field position, and a much better chance to actually go down and try to win the game. But that penalty on Robert Spillane certainly pivotal and costing them about 30 yards, about a minute, and 2 timeouts. Like you can't have that. And you can debate the penalty. I think by the letter of the law, probably a penalty. I don't really love to see that called in that situation at all. But you know, it's just, again, little things here and there add up to losses.
And yeah, exactly. You can't continually put yourself in a position where a call like that is going to, you know, not be the difference in the game, but really be that costly. You know, you want to have a margin of error. You want to have a cushion.
And again, when you talk about the little details, I'm just going to tell this little story from the locker room, just because I think it goes to show you the little details. Yeah. And how they add up to losses in the end. You know, I was talking to Jonah Laulu, a kid from Centennial High School here in Las Vegas. Had a really good game. Had the pass breakup on the third down play that got the Raiders the ball back with 1:56 remaining, no timeouts, but back, you know, deep in their own territory. And I just started off. I was, you know, writing about him, and I started off just by saying, "Hey, that was a great play.
Yeah.
Like, you feel like you're a defensive back now making that play."
Right.
And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I thought you were going to ask about how I messed it up." And I said, "Dude, you messed it up. It was a great play." He said, "No."
Great accountability.
And he said, "I was supposed to drop to the center of the field, guard maybe the right hash. I started to drop to the left hash, where it's not where I was supposed to be. Isaiah Palomau was there, so I started to drift back over to the right, and I deflected the ball, so it looks on the surface like a good play. But I should have been at the right hash to begin with. I would have been able to intercept it instead of knocking it away. Now we have much better field position. Now we actually have a chance to win." And he said it's going to haunt him for the rest of his life. Yeah. Those are the little details that on the surface you say, "Hey, great play," but they will say, "No, we were this far off from making a great play, not a good play," and that is the difference between winning and losing in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. And another play that helped decide this game, as Adam mentioned, was Jack Jones biting on the double fake. They took advantage of his aggressiveness, threw a 30-yard touchdown pass, Kirk Cousins to Drake London right over the top. But at that point, it was an easy catch and throw. But Jack Jones, to his credit, manned up and took responsibility for that play. And here's Jack Jones in the locker room afterwards.
Defensively, I feel like we played a good defensive game. I mean, talk about me. I mean, I can't get out up in that situation. I mean, we know what's coming in the fringe area. You know, we know double moves gonna be there. I mean, I gotta get my eyes right, bro. I mean, that's unacceptable. I mean, I'm not going for that. Coach not going for that. And, you know, I got to be better next week. Me trying to jump the ball, me trying to make a play. I'm going on my way trying to make a play, and I'm giving up plays. And that's not how you make plays. You make plays by doing your job and being consistent. And, you know, I know that. So, I mean, man, I got to be better, man.
The ownership is admirable. But, you know, as Desmond Ridder said after the game, and, you know, I wrote a lot about how, you know, until the Raiders get the quarterback situation solved, you know, they're going to be vulnerable to these types of games, this type of season, on and on and on and on and on. And it wasn't his fault that they lost today. He's part of the symptom as a quarterback. He's the third quarterback now that started the game. The 2 others didn't distinguish themselves either. I don't think any of them are quarterbacks that the Raiders can comfortably say, yes, we can move forward with. They got to adjust that. They've got to get that adjust. But to his credit, I thought Desmond, you know, getting thrown into the fire the way he was, been in the building for about 8 weeks or so, played hard, if not well.
And look, it wasn't good overall, but did add a dimension as a runner, which I thought helped them pick up a couple first downs here and there, give them a little something. Not enough. Obviously, they didn't win the game, but did that. And I guess let's say pretty good Hail Mary throw, because it got right in the middle, and they actually had a chance. I've watched it now about 6 times.
Both of them.
Yeah, first one I think Terrace Marshall could have got the first one, and then but it was out just at the back of the end zone, and then the other one, floated up to the middle of the end zone. I mean, not every quarterback does that well. So, I mean, these are the things we have to find to try to praise this offense at this point. But, you know, he put it up there. They had a chance to come down with something and get a victory, and in the end they did. And, of course, probably better for the long run that they didn't. But, it was certainly, you know, there was a couple of things here and there. And I think we should also mention, as we're talking about this, One of the bright spots recently has been Sincere McCormick. Lost him early in the game, and it looked like a pretty bad ankle injury. I saw him in a walking boot, and I had a brief conversation with him. I'll just relate part of that. Just he certainly was not in a great space.
Certainly not.
You got to feel for him. You got to feel for the team that they had found a little spark in the run game, and that's that. Now you have to kind of start over there, and you're probably are back to Alexander Madison. As we saw, Amir Abdullah had some nice catches in the out of the backfield and scored the touchdown, of course, out of the backfield. But every time you almost find a bright spot,
right?
It's a very brief flicker.
And listen, granted, there's no official standings or records on this, but I got to imagine the Raiders are creeping up on the record for most ankle injuries in a season.
It's true.
It has been uncanny how many guys have been lost to ankle injuries. Sincere McCormick being the latest, and it looked ugly.
Yeah,
it looked like it was a really ugly ankle injury. All right, so the Raiders are 2-12. If you're of the draft thinking, that puts them. They're tied. They're in a virtual tie with the New York Giants. We'll see how that all plays out by the end of the year.
I think we should take time to explain this. I'm about to write a story. I'm actually going to leave where we're sitting right here in the press box and go write a quick story because there's a lot of discrepancies out there whether the Raiders would have the first pick or the second pick right now. And the reason for that, for those that are kind of trying to figure that out, some sites, like I believe ESPN is one a lot of people use, have the Raiders now listed as the number 2 pick in the draft. Tankathon, which I would recommend a lot of people look at and use, has them as the one pick. You could say, how is that possible? What's going on? It's actually a pretty simple explanation. A lot of the sites, including ESPN, use the tiebreaker as strength of schedule. And a lot of sites use what their strength of schedule is at this very moment.
So they're not accounting.
And right now, they would have the number 2 pick based on what the strength of schedule is right now. A site like Tankathon projects. So they'll take in the records of the final 3 opponents, and they already project that out. And because the remaining opponents, including Jacksonville next week, don't have a very good record, the Raiders will pass the Giants in terms of worst schedule among
and in
the
this
worst
case,
teams.
Losing to bad teams is actually better for the strength of schedule because you're
playing bad teams.
Playing bad teams, yes,
playing
exactly.
bad teams is better.
And Adam is a big-time projector, by the way, so he likes to project. So that makes a lot of sense. The bottom line is we're probably not going to know until the nail is in the coffin on this season because
it also I guess we should point out it gives you, if you are following the draft and monitoring it, and that's what you want to pay attention to, cheer against every team the Raiders have played or will play.
Right.
So if you're watching games on a Sunday, like, hey, what are we looking for here? Every team the Raiders have played or will play, you want to cheer against. Every team the Giants have played or will play, you want to cheer for.
Yes.
And obviously, as we're talking about draft next week, a massive game here at Allegiant Stadium. One of the biggest games of the season in the NFL.
Believe it or not.
Jacksonville and the Raiders playing for potentially one of the top picks.
And Adam thinks that this is a game that the Raiders could actually win.
I absolutely think
the reason I don't think it's going to happen is, A, I'm not sure Aiden's going to be back, number one. Number two, I think Jacksonville is going to score some points in a way that the Falcons obviously couldn't. And by the way, if they had lost this game, the Falcons, and I'm Arthur Blank, their owner, I'm really upset with my head coach, Raheem Morris, for not bringing Michael Penix in at some point in that game. And I think afterwards, finally, Raheem seems to be he basically said, got to get better play from the quarterback position. That's the bottom line. So I'm not so sure we're not going to see Michael. I thought there might have been a chance here tonight to see Michael Penix because Kirk Cousins looks like
broken.
He's broken. He looks like he's 60 years old out there, and I feel bad for saying that. He's obviously coming off an Achilles injury.
I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but Kirk Cousins threw a touchdown pass in this game that was a very easy. I'm going to say right now, I could have made the pass.
I think he could have.
It was an easy pitch and catch. No, I'm not building up my
outside
own
shoulder.
I'm not building up my own throwing ability. I'm just saying
the guy was wide open.
Anybody could have made that throw because Jack Jones bit on the on the throw to the Jack Jones bit on the on the throw to the marker instead of thinking that it could go over the top. But that was Kirk Cousins' only touchdown drive of the game, his only touchdown pass of the game, and his only touchdown pass since November 3rd.
Right.
Since November 3rd, that's his only touchdown pass. He's broken.
Right, he is broken, and it's fair to remind everyone he suffered an Achilles tendon injury. He's not the youngest guy in the world. He was never the biggest athlete in the world. Yeah. So it was painful to watch him out there.
It's also not a great narrative for the Raiders that a team beat the Raiders on the road and is like, we got to get a new quarterback.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Not a great sign.
No, not at all. But that's the type of year that we're talking about here with the Raiders. It's getting to historical levels, basically, with them. It's just a bad scene, with the Raiders. But as Adam mentioned, if you're thinking long range, maybe this finally gets the quarterback here that the Raiders can build their team around. No guarantees.
They're winning next week, so
I don't know. We might have to put a peanut butter and jelly sandwich
sure.
on that game.
Uncrustable?
They're
so delicious.
Tashawn had one of those today with the strawberry jelly, which is
it's the right choice.
Yes,
I think grape. Actually.
No. We were talking about that. I think we're team strawberry. Anyway, it's been one of those seasons, and obviously one of those kind of nights. We want to say thank you to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We want to say thank you to Station Casinos, STN Sports. We want to say thanks to Dom and Heidi, our great producers, who are right in front of us, behind the camera and everything like that, making us look good, and that's hard to do, and making us sound good and all that good stuff. We'll be back at it midweek next week. The Raiders on to Jacksonville here at Allegiant Stadium before heading to New Orleans, and then they wrap up the season against the Los Angeles Chargers here at Allegiant Stadium. I don't think for anybody's purposes this can happen soon enough for the season to end. I think everybody in that building, wants to move on to the next step, whatever that next step might be. We didn't even get into Antonio Pierce and his future. We will probably midweek because there's probably a lot to talk about with that. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. It's a Monday, so I can't say enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll talk to you guys midweek this week.